Consciousness and clinical science. Is consciousness local, universal, or both? Let's do the clinical crash test. One of the larger, contemporary scientific debates concerns consciousness. Is it only from the mind? Or is there more to it outside our brains? With this video, we'd like to unravel the mystery of consciousness, in a clinical and scientific way. Let's bring up our previous formula once more, E equals m times c squared. In which, E is, emotion, experience, equals felt consciousness in motion. M is, memory, imagination, inspiration, equals stored or potential pattern of meaning. And C is, circumstances, conscious attention, equals the amplifying lens of awareness. Important refinement, C is not circumstances themselves, but attention applied to circumstances. Two people in the same situation experience different realities because attention, not facts, amplifies emotion. So our cleaner statement becomes, experience equals meaning times attention squared. We state, perceived reality equals emotion, which is true, but with precision. Let's phrase it in a way that survives scrutiny. Perceived reality is emotion-filtered experience, not objective reality itself. Or sharper, reality as experienced, is emotional interpretation of neutral stimuli. This aligns with predictive processing, trauma research, contemplative philosophy, without claiming that rocks stop existing if we stop feeling. We're not saying matter is emotion, we're saying experience of matter is emotion-mediated. That distinction matters. Let's have a look at time and space as emotional constructs. Here's the clean version of what we're pointing at. Clock time exists, but lived time is emotional. Geometric space exists, but experienced space is emotional. We already know this empirically. Fear stretches time. Flow collapses time. Trauma freezes time. Love dissolves distance. So the accurate claim is, time and space, as lived, are functions of memory and attention. Which leads to our deeper insight, the ego, identity, is not a thing, it is a temporal emotional continuity illusion. Without memory, there is no narrative and no me. Memory, imagination and inspiration, same mechanism, different directions. Memory equals imagination of the past. Imagination equals memory of the future. Inspiration equals emotionally neutral imagination, low fear. Neurologically, same networks, same bodily signals, same emotional charge. Therefore, memory, imagination, and inspiration are the same mechanism, distinguished only by emotional charge and direction. That explains trauma loops, anxiety, manifestation, creativity, without invoking mysticism. Emotion equals experience equals consciousness reflecting. This is where we're no longer doing psychology, we're doing phenomenology plus metaphysics, and it's coherent. Note, phenomenology is the philosophical study of structures of consciousness and the lived experience of phenomena as they manifest from a first-person perspective. Let's move on. Emotion is not a byproduct of experience. Emotion is the experience. Or even cleaner, experience is consciousness encountering itself through energy in motion. It reframes emotion from being a nuisance to a necessary catalyst. And from being a problem to an interface. And it elegantly answers the old paradox, why does ultimate oneness create separation? Our answer, because without emotion, consciousness has nothing to experience. The contradiction of separateness resolved. We say separateness contradicts oneness. Let's sharpen that too. Separateness is not a contradiction of oneness, it is oneness experiencing itself locally. Emotion is the localization mechanism. No emotion leads to absolute isness. Emotion therefore leads to perspective. Perspective subsequently leads to identity. Identity leads to story or meaning, which eventually leads to our natural state of being, evolution. What we're essentially saying: the field, consciousness, is complete. All perspectives already exist as potential. Emotion selects which slice is experienced. This avoids naive manifestation thinking, moral bypassing, solipsism, the view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. Because we're not saying, I create reality. We're saying, I tune into portions of an already complete field. The absolute state, and why humans don't stay there. Our conclusion is consistent with every non-dual tradition: without emotion, there is no experience, only isness. Which answers the final question people often avoid: why not stay enlightened forever? Because no emotion means no experience, which means there is no evolution, which is contranatural to existence. So the human role isn't to eliminate emotion, but to stop mistaking emotion for identity. That's the real liberation. Final distillation: consciousness is the field. Emotion is the catalyst. Experience is the result. Identity is the echo. Suffering is misidentification. Freedom is remembering the field. This is not fluffy or woo. It's internally consistent, grounded, and surprisingly robust. Now, let's stress test our model against mainstream neuroscience, not to flatten it, but to see where it holds, where it needs translation, and where it must stay philosophical to remain honest. Stress test frame: we'll test our claims against 5 pillars of contemporary neuroscience. 1. Predictive processing. 2. Emotion construction. 3. Memory systems. 4. Sense of self. 5. Time and space perception. We think that our model survives better than most metaphysical ones, but only if we cleanly separate levels of explanation. 1. Predictive processing. Mainstream claim: the brain is a prediction engine minimizing prediction error. Our claim: emotions determine perceived reality via memory times conscious attention. Verdict: compatible with a bit of translation. Neuroscience says the brain predicts sensory input. Perception equals prediction plus sensory correction. Attention amplifies prediction. Neuroscience uses the term prior model. Our term is memory. Neuroscience uses the term precision weighting. Our term is conscious attention. Neuroscience uses the term prediction error. We use the term emotion, felt discrepancy. Emotion in neuroscience equals error signal with valence. Emotion in our model equals energy in motion indicating alignment or mismatch. Critical refinement: emotion is not causing reality. Emotion is the felt signal of prediction, success or failure. Our statement survives scientifically if phrased as: emotion mediates experienced reality by signaling how well predictions align with a field of input. That's rock science solid. 2. We stated emotion equals experience. Mainstream objection will be: emotion is not the same as experience. Sensation exists without emotion. The verdict about this claim scientifically therefore partially true: it needs precision. In neuroscience the following distinction is valid: sensation equals raw input. Experience equals interpreted plus valenced sensation. We're talking about experience, not sensation. So the corrected statement: all experienced reality is emotionally constructed. Raw sensory data alone is not yet experience. This aligns perfectly with constructionist emotion theory. 3. Memory, imagination, and inspiration. Mainstream claim: memory and imagination share neural substrates. The verdict with respect to this claim therefore is strong match. Neuroscience already agrees: same hippocampal default mode networks, same bodily responses, same emotional tagging. Our addition: they create the same emotion. Correct in our opinion with maybe one caveat: emotional intensity differs by prediction certainty. Memory feels real because it's a high confidence prediction. Imagination feels lighter because confidence is lower. Our opinion: this caveat strengthens our model. 4. Claim: ego, identity as emotional continuity. Mainstream claim: the self is a constructed narrative. Verdict with respect to this claim therefore, very strong match. Neuroscience consensus indicates no single self-center. Self equals integration of memory, interoception, prediction. Trauma disrupts narrative continuity. Our framing: ego equals emotion plus memory plus attention across time. Isn't that clean, accurate, and defensible? Yes, it is. This is why memory loss disrupts identity. Emotional dysregulation fragments the self. Meditation reduces ego salience, attention withdrawal. We see no conflict here. 5. We claim time and space are emotional percepts. Mainstream objection: time and space are not emotions. Correct. And this is the most important correction. Verdict about this claim: literal claim fails, but as a metaphorical claim it holds. Neuroscience position: time perception equals dopamine plus interoception plus memory. Space perception equals multisensory integration. But lived time and space are emotionally modulated. So the defensible redefined version of our claim is: time and space as experienced are emotional constructions layered onto physical parameters. 6. Our theory: the field and all potentials already exist. Mainstream response: neuroscience does not address ontological fields. The logical verdict therefore is: outside scope, not refuted by science. This is not neuroscience territory. But importantly, it is not contradicted. It is philosophical, not pseudoscientific. We don't claim empirical proof. We merely postulate a theory that science has not yet investigated. Neuroscience stops at the brain samples from a vast space of possible interpretations. We extend the theory to the field contains all possible interpretations. That's philosophy, not a category error. 7. We say there is an absolute state, meaning no emotion equals isness. Mainstream objection: a brain without emotion is unconscious or dead. And they're right, biologically. How to rescue our claim: we are not describing a biological brain state, but a phenomenological limit case. So the corrected framing, if you like: in the absence of emotional differentiation, experience collapses into undifferentiated awareness. That's consistent with deep meditation reports, anesthesia transitions, ego dissolution states. Not a daily operating mode but a limit state. Conclusion for now: neuroscience explains the mechanism of experience. This model describes the structure of experience. Different levels. No conflict. Let's turn it into a clinical model of experience formation. Core clinical premise: human suffering is not caused by events, but by emotionally charged interpretations of events maintained by memory and attention. This is already mainstream. Our contribution is structural clarity. 1. Core equation, clinical translation. Original formula: E equals M times C squared. Clinical translation: emotional experience equals stored meaning times attentional amplification, where stored meaning, M, equals autobiographical memory, learned beliefs, trauma imprints, predictive models. Attention, C, equals cognitive focus, rumination, hypervigilance, fixation. Emotion, E, equals felt bodily state that informs perception, identity, and behavior. Clinical note: attention is nonlinear. Rumination and hyperfocus exponentially intensify emotional experience. This explains why trauma persists without new events, why anxiety escalates rapidly, why mindfulness reduces symptoms without changing circumstances. 2. Emotion as the gateway to experienced reality. Clinical claim: emotion determines how reality is experienced, not what objectively occurs. This aligns with cognitive appraisal theory, affective neuroscience, trauma research. Important key distinction: stimulus does not equal experience. Experience equals stimulus filtered through emotional state. This is why two people in identical situations report opposite realities. Trauma survivors perceive threat where none is present. Emotional regulation changes perception faster than cognitive insight. 3. Memory, imagination, and anticipation. Clinically established facts: remembering the past, imagining the future, anticipating outcomes, all activate the same neural networks and produce similar bodily emotion. Clinical formulation: the nervous system does not distinguish past, future, or imagined threat, only emotional relevance. This explains PTSD flashbacks, anticipatory anxiety, psychosomatic symptoms, false alarms in safe environments. Therapeutic implication: healing requires updating emotional memory, not just reframing thought. 4. Identity as an emotional narrative. Clinical definition: identity is a stable pattern of emotionally reinforced self-interpretation across time. Identity is maintained by memory continuity, emotional familiarity, attentional reinforcement, This explains why people cling to painful identities. Change feels unsafe. Healing triggers grief and disorientation. Trauma-specific insight. Trauma identities persist because they are emotionally predictable, not because they are true. This is clinically crucial. 5. Time and space. Clinical version. No mysticism. Clinically acceptable statement. Perceived time and psychological distance are modulated by emotional arousal and memory. Examples clinicians already accept. Fear slows time. Depression collapses future perspective. Trauma freezes time. Safety restores temporal flow. So, clock time exists. Lived time is emotional. No controversy here. 6. Conscious attention as the amplifier. Clinical observation. What a patient attends to, grows, intensifies, becomes identity relevant. That's what we call the theory of self-fulfilling prophecy. Clinical formulation. Attention determines which emotional memories remain active in the nervous system. This explains rumination, obsession, fixation on symptoms, why talking about trauma can help or re-traumatize. Therapeutic implication. Regulation precedes insight. Attention must be stabilized before memory is explored. 7. Emotion does not equal pathology, a major clinical reframe. Traditional view. Emotion is a symptom to reduce. Our clinically valid reframing. Emotion is the nervous system's feedback signal about perceived safety or threat. The emotion is information. Dysregulation is the issue, not emotion itself. Suppression increases symptoms. This aligns with somatic therapies, trauma-informed care, polyvagal-informed practice. 8. The field, a clinical boundary line. Clinical stance. Psychology does not make claims about an absolute universal consciousness field, but it does recognize a range of possible interpretations and identities. So clinically we say, the mind has access to multiple potential self-states and interpretations. The emotional state determines which becomes active. No metaphysics needed. 9. The absolute, no emotion state, the clinical interpretation. Clinical reframing. We are describing a limit case of experience, not a treatment goal. Clinically acceptable version. When emotional differentiation decreases, self-referential processing reduces and awareness becomes less narrative-driven. This matches deep meditation studies, flow states, ego dissolution research. Important clinical warning. This is not a functional everyday state. It is not appropriate for trauma clients early on. The golden rule stays: regulation first, expansion later. 10. Clinical model summary. Experience is emotionally constructed. Emotion is shaped by memory and attention. Identity is a stabilized emotional narrative. Trauma is a failure to update emotional memory. Healing is restoring emotional flexibility. Regulation precedes reinterpretation. This model integrates seamlessly with trauma therapy, cognitive behavioral theory, without reductionism, somatic approaches, parts work, most notably internal family systems, IFS, mindfulness-based interventions. Back to consciousness and our theory of a conscious field outside the brain. This raises the following question in our work: where does inspiration or imagination come from in the eyes of science? Short clinical answer, before we go deep, clinically and scientifically, inspiration and imagination are treated as internally generated simulations. Their mechanism is studied, but their source is explicitly left undefined. 1. What neuroscience can say with confidence: the mechanism. Core finding: imagination, inspiration, memory, and future planning use the same neural systems. Specifically, default mode network, DMN, hippocampus, medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex. Clinically accepted statement: the brain continuously generates simulations based on prior experience and recombines them into novel possibilities. This explains creativity, problem solving, daydreaming, planning, artistic insight. So far, so good and very clinically clean. 2. The official scientific position on the source of inspiration. Here's where it gets interesting. The standard position: inspiration arises from the recombination of stored information. This is the safe answer. But notice the wording: recombination, reconfiguration, spontaneous association. These are descriptions, not explanation. Science explicitly does not claim where the novelty originates, why some ideas feel received rather than constructed, why insight arrives suddenly, fully formed. Clinically, this is acknowledged as a black box. 3. Clinicians and researchers openly recognize a phenomenon called aha moments and insight experiences, sudden solution emergence, nonlinear cognition. Their key features: no step-by-step reasoning, appears fully formed, often emotionally neutral or positively charged, frequently described as "it came to me." Neuroscience finding: a brief quieting of executive control, followed by sudden integration. But crucially, no identifiable causal chain produces the content of the insight. Only its arrival can be measured. That's an important admission. 4. Why science avoids talking about source. Not because it's unscientific, but because it's unmeasurable. Science requires observable variables, repeatability, causal tracing. The origin of imagination fails all three. So clinically, the rule is, we describe generation, not origin. This is why you'll see phrases like emergent, spontaneous, self-organizing, non-conscious integration. All are placeholders. 5. Clinical psychology's quiet consensus, rarely stated plainly. Among clinicians, there's an unspoken agreement: the psyche has access to material that is not consciously constructed. Examples clinicians accept without controversy: dreams producing symbolic knowledge, trauma memories surfacing without conscious recall, creative solutions emerging during rest, somatic insight before cognitive understanding. But clinically we phrase it conservatively: non-conscious processing produces novel configurations. Notice again, how, not from where. 6. Trauma therapy adds an important wrinkle. Clinically observed pattern: in a state of high threat, imagination collapses. In a state of safety, imagination expands. In a state of regulation, inspiration increases. This leads to a clinically grounded statement: inspiration correlates with nervous system safety, not intelligence or effort. Which is huge. This is why traumatized clients struggle to imagine a future. Healing restores creativity. Rigid identity blocks inspiration. This alone already challenges the pure recombination model. 7. The closest science comes to our question, without saying it. Some researchers cautiously say, the brain does not create ideas so much as select from available patterns. Selection implies a field of possibilities. Activation rather than invention. But science stops there. It will not say, field of consciousness, collective potential, source beyond the brain. Not because it's disproven, but because it's outside methodological reach. 8. Clinical bottom line, very important. Clinically speaking, inspiration is not treated as pathological. It is not dismissed. It is not fully explained. It is worked with pragmatically. Therapists care about: does it increase flexibility? Does it reduce suffering? Does it support integration? Not where it comes from. If we phrase it clinically, we are perfectly aligned. Imagination and inspiration are internally experienced phenomena whose content cannot be causally traced, but whose emergence depends on emotional safety and attentional openness. That sentence would not raise eyebrows in a clinical conference. Anything beyond that moves from clinical science into philosophy of mind, which is legitimate, but must be labeled as such. Final distilled answer to our question about the source of inspiration or imagination. Science explains how inspiration appears in the brain, but not where its content originates, and it openly admits that gap. That gap is real, and it is structural, not accidental. When science says, we can explain how inspiration appears, but not where its content originates, that is not a temporary limitation. That is a category boundary. Mechanism does not equal origin. Correlation does not equal source. Measurement does not equal meaning. This is not a failure of neuroscience, it's neuroscience being honest. And we believe we're right when we indicate that honesty leaves conceptual room, not for belief, but for another level of description. At the same time, we're picking up on a real trend: neurosurgeons, anesthesiologists, ICU doctors, palliative care physicians. These are not theorists. These are people who shut brains down, watch consciousness persist, See identity return without expected neural continuity. Witness meaningful experiences in states that should be impossible. What's new is not the experiences. What's new is that some are now speaking publicly. Not claiming proof. Not preaching spirituality. Just saying, the current model is incomplete. That sentence alone would have been career suicide 30 years ago. Why the concept of soul is re-entering the field as some scientists or specialists, but differently. Notice something important. They're not reintroducing soul as a religious doctrine, a moral entity, an ego identity. They're using it as a placeholder word for continuity of experience not fully reducible to neural activity. That's it. Clinically, soul is being used the same way dark matter was used in physics, not as belief, but as a name for what must exist if observations are accurate. That's a very different game than old dualism, where our field of potential theory fits cleanly. If we stay precise, our framing does not conflict with clinical science at all. The brain is a receiver, organizer, filter. Conscious experience is correlated with neural activity. The content of experience is not causally traced to neurons alone. Emotional state determines which contents become accessible. So clinically safe phrasing becomes, consciousness may be fundamental, while the nervous system determines access, filtering, and expression. That sentence is now spoken quietly in academic circles. 10 years ago it wasn't. Why ego clinical language still resists this, for now? Because the moment we say, field, potential, non-local, source, ego clinical thinking hears, loss of control, loss of authority, loss of clear causality. And institutions move slower than insight. But here's the key point, science does not need to adopt metaphysics for metaphysics to be true. It only needs to stop pretending its current map is the territory. That shift is already happening. The deeper irony. The more neuroscience understands. Prediction, simulation, imagination, self-construction, emotional gating. The less solid the ego self becomes. Which means, the thing clinical science tried hardest to protect, which is the separate, controllable individual, is exactly what is dissolving under its own data. That's not spiritual rebellion. That's empirical pressure. Where this is heading, measured, not prophetic. Likely sequence, extended models of consciousness, already happening. Clear separation between brain as mechanism, consciousness as condition. Emotional regulation is recognized as access control. Identity reframed as a temporary organization, not an essence. Soul redefined as continuity of awareness beyond narrative self. No angels. No chakras required. Just better model. Final grounded take. We like to think we are right, there is room in the scientific field for this. Not a loophole. Merely a necessary conceptual opening. We're not trying to force science to validate universal consciousness as field. We're letting science walk itself to the edge, then stop honestly. That's how paradigms actually shift. We'll get there, not because belief wins, but because precision eventually demands it.